You know, it's funny. I swore at one time I would never wear a wire. Now I have one on just about every week. God has a sense of humor. But, I was thinking in the back, I was listening to John and my very dear friend Brett, and I had this thing planned that I was going to say, and then I changed everything up. So you're going to get a little bit of everything out of me tonight after listening to both of these men. Incredible stories. Brett is a very dear friend and a partner now in two companies, actually three companies that I'm involved with. And John Maxwell I've known for a while, and brilliant leadership, and I hope you took to heart a lot of things that he said. And I'm here to talk about transformation. And before I start, I want you to all take a very good look at me, and I really mean this. I'm probably the most blessed, most fortunate person that's ever going to walk up on this stage and talk to you about anything. And the reason I say that is because had I been left up to my own to do what I wanted to do in my life, follow the path that I was on, I'd either be dead or in prison for the rest of my life. And you know what, people? That's what I deserved. That's what I earned for myself, having spent over 20 years on the street every day, and I mean every day, in violation of both God's laws and the laws of man. And you know what, people? I did it knowingly and willingly. Nobody pushed me into that life. And I'll be honest with you, there were times when I did something that I was very uncomfortable with doing, but I did it anyway. So I was a knowing and willing bad guy for over 20 years of my life. And it's become crystal clear for me in the last 20 some odd years that if God didn't have a different plan and a purpose for my life, I wouldn't be here today. Crystal clear. Now, I'm not going to lay Christianity on you. I love what John said because every time I come up and give my testimony, I start off the same way. And basically, we're just messengers here. We're here to give you some knowledge, some encouragement for some of the experiences that we've had in our life. And I'm not here to force Christianity on you. I don't want to turn you into a Christian. I'm not here to hit you over the head with the Bible. But I got to tell you this, when it comes to transformation, I can tell you in my life, it's not anything that I had to try to do. My transformation came from the inside out. And, I just recently on my platform, as a matter of fact, this past Wednesday was the first one I did an online Bible study. And I invited everybody. I said, it doesn't matter what faith you are. You could be atheist, you could be Christian, Jew, you can be anything. What I want to try to do is give you a biblical worldview based upon Scripture to help you whatever kind of situation you might be going through. And trust me when I tell you, there's a biblical worldview that can help you in anything that you're going through. Now, some of you may not need a transformation. You may be doing great right now. Maybe not today. Maybe tomorrow something could be different. Maybe you need a transformation not like I needed, from a guy on the street to somebody that wanted to straighten their life out and do the right thing. But, there could be a point in your life where things just have to change. And how does that happen? Do you learn something on the outside? Do you study? Normally, transformation comes from the inside out. I can tell you that. And it's based upon a lot of different things that might happen in your life. All right, my friends, we're in the midst of the holiday season, and this holiday season, I've got something very special for you. When you grab my exclusive wine box, which is packed with premium wine, custom gifts, and some real surprises, you'll also get a free month inside my school community, or my family as I like to refer to it, where you'll find my full keynote presentation along with my sit down with John Maxwell. You're also going to get free access to all the assets I created, which include powerful courses on leadership, negotiation, and how to be a real boss. I'll also answer your questions on regularly scheduled Zoom calls, along with very powerful lessons I'll share that just might transform both your life and your business. The Christmas box has award-winning wines, it's got unforgettable gifts, and some real surprises. But I tell you this, the spots are limited, and this offer is not going to last. So what I suggest, click the link now to grab your box, join the community, and together, let's crush 2025. And you know what I found out? And when I say this, apply it to yourself. We have certain defining moments in our lives. Something that happens to you that could be so dynamic and have such an impact on you that it changes the way you think, changes the course of your life in some way. and sometimes for the good, and sometimes, quite frankly, not good. And hopefully, if you have those defining moments in your life, it's for the right purpose and the right reason. Now, I got to tell you something. I'm going to go through a couple of those defining moments, and then I'm going to jump around a little bit, because some of the things that Maxwell said and Brett said have kind of put something in my head, and we're here to give you some knowledge based upon our experience and what we've learned in our life. But I will tell you this. If you would have said to me 25 years ago that I'd be up on a stage speaking about anything, I would have said, you're crazy. Never even thought of it, had no clue in my life that this is where I would end up at one point. But I'll tell you how it happened with me. I was finishing up a 10-year prison sentence in Lompoc Federal Prison. And I had done 5 years. I was out on parole for 13 months. And like a fool, and I'll be the first to say it, I fall into a trap. I violate my parole. So the feds put me back in. I was doing federal time. And by the way, out of this, some of the years that I was in prison, they had me in the LA County Jail. And guess who my cellmates were? The two Menendez brothers. I was with them for 11 months, and I've been all over the news talking about it because of the show that's on Netflix now, Monsters. But anyway, that's another time, another story. You want to ask me a question about it, you can, since it's hot right now. They actually have another documentary coming out, I think Monday, October 7th. Very interesting, because the boys get to express themselves and talk in it. So some haven't seen Monsters on Netflix, watch it. It was very well done, sad. I don't know how accurate some of it is, but I spent 11 months with them. I really do believe a lot of the things they told me that you see in that show are true. But anyway, I'm finishing up an 10-year sentence, and when I go back in, they put me in lockdown. Feds were very upset with me. They were trying to get me to cooperate. I didn't want to cooperate in the way they wanted me to, so they kept me in solitary confinement. Now, I was in solitary for 29 months and 7 days, 6x8 cell. That was it, 24/7. And people, I want to be honest with you, that's not easy. You got to be pretty fortunate to get through that in the right way. And I'll tell you how I got through it. But I saw a lot of bad things happening there. A lot of guys who couldn't handle it, and I'm not being demeaning to them. It's difficult, but they couldn't handle it, and things got pretty rough. I saw a lot of things in there that were just not pleasant, let's put it that way. So I'm in there for 29 months and 7 days. Every single day, I had a yellow paper and a pencil, and I would write the warden. Warden, let me out of here. You know, it's Lompoc, California. They was claiming that they were putting me there for my own protection because I had walked away from that life. And some people on the street were mad at me, I'll be honest with you. But I really didn't need to be in lockdown. I was okay. Every day, I write him a letter. 29 months, 7 days. Let me out of here. Finally, I was very effective. It took him 29 months and 7 days before he answered me. And he sends a correctional officer down to my cell. Franzese, the warden wants to see you. Great, never seen the guy. He doesn't come down there, right? So I get there. I had lost about 20 pounds being in a hole. I wasn't eating a lot. So I go up there and I got my speech prepared for him. I didn't know why he was bringing me up. But as I get to the office, he looks at me and I look at him. I'm standing by the door, and he walks over to his file cabinet, pulls it open, and there's all my letters because he was obligated to keep them. So he says, Franzese, you're wearing me out with these letters every single day. I said, hey, Warden, I got a lot of time on my hands, so I figure I'll write you, right? What else am I going to do? So he said, you know what? He said, just for your persistence, I'm going to let you out. He said, if you thought you were going to get hurt or anything, you wouldn't ask to go out. I said, Warden, I got a young, pretty wife. I said, I lost all this weight. I'm going home in 6 months. I want to get myself in shape. Walk the yard a little bit, walk the track rather, work out a little bit in the yard. He says, okay, but you have to sign a waiver. Anything happens to you on the yard, you get in trouble, you get hurt, you're not going to sue the Bureau of Prisons. I said, Warden, give me anything, I'll sign it, right? So I get out, and I'm walking the yard, and it was like I had a Sony Walkman. Any young people here don't know what that is? I know in the digital world, I got to explain it. But anyway, I'm listening to Billy Joel. I'm walking around the track. I'm feeling like I'm free. Beautiful day in California. I get halfway into the first lap, and I hear over the loudspeaker, Franzese, report back to the warden's office. Not good news. I was what you call a central monitoring inmate, where any movement on my part had to be approved by Washington, D.C. So I figured they got word, he let me out, and they were going to try to lock me down again. I'm preparing my speech. I get back to the office, and it gets worse. I see two guys in suits. Now, I don't have to see a badge. I see the suit and the shoes. I knew exactly who they were, FBI agents, right? So I see them and I turn around, I start walking away. I said, guys, leave me alone. You know, I'm not cooperating. I'll go back and finish up my time in the hole. Franzese, get back here. We have to talk to you. I said, not talking to you. Get back here. It's important. Now I thought, God forbid, maybe something's wrong with my family. So I go in the office. I said, what do you guys want? They said, Mike, they said, you claim you turned your life around. You walked away from that life. We're going to give you an opportunity to prove it. I said, what do you mean? They said, we need a favor from you. I said, no favors. I said, there's always strings attached. They said, just listen up. They said, Major League Baseball, the NBA, NFL, and the NHL are doing an anti-gambling video. You know the problem. I had a big gambling operation on the street. I had probably 12 bookmakers working for me, and we were dealing with a lot of athletes. They said, we want you to participate in this video and just tell them how you set these athletes up. I said, guys, you've been telling me for the last several years I'm going to get killed. Now you want me to do a video? I said, this has got to be a setup, right? They said, no, it's legit. I said, I don't do videos. I got to get out of here and try to get my life squared away again. I got a lot of work to do. They said, well, if you'd agree to do this, we're going to sweeten the pot. I said, what do you mean? They said, how long have you been down? I said, I've been down almost 8 years. You guys know that. You put me here. They said, well, if you agree to do this, we're taking you out of here for 3 days. We're filming it in Chicago. We got a hotel room for you, king-size bed, real pillows and blankets. Go down, take a dip in the pool. They said, order room service, macaroni, pasta, whatever you Italians eat. They said, have a ball. Who's better than you for 3 days? So I thought about it a minute. I said, hey, guys, I've been down for almost 8 years. You get my wife in that room with me, I'll make a video on anything that you want. And trust me, I meant it, right? 8 years is a long time, but we were married. It's okay, right? Anyway, they said, we'll try. As it turns out, they were taking me out on a Monday, and that Monday we had an earthquake in California. All movement stopped. They couldn't take me out. So I said, man. Anyway, since I agreed to do it, NBA Productions came into the prison, and they did my portion of the video in there. And they spent about $250,000. All the leagues chipped in. It was all about Pete Rose, God rest his soul, he just passed, Art Schleister, and Greg Gumbel was the MC. And I did my part. And I told them exactly how we set these athletes up, what happened, so on and so forth. I get out 6 months later, the leagues come to me directly. Michael, this video is done well. They're really having an impact on our players. We want you to take it a step further. Come and speak to our athletes because you know we have a problem. There is a big problem in the leagues with gambling. Trust me on that. So I said, guys, I don't do that. I don't speak to athletes. I'm trying to get my life squared away. I'll never forget the head of security for Major League Baseball, Kevin Hallinan. He was a big Irish guy. He was a former New York City homicide detective. So he looked at me and he said, big tough mob guy, you afraid to speak to a couple of athletes? I said, all right, set it up. I'm going, right? That was in 1996. So in 1996, I spoke to the Major League Baseball team in spring training. We did all the minor leagues. And I've been doing that on and off ever since for the last 30 some odd years. And then I went to the NBA and the NFL and NHL. And then in 1998, the NCAA contacted me and they said, Mike, can you bring this to our college campuses because there is a problem in college sports with gambling. Since then, I've done over 300 Division I and II universities, still do it, and it's been a very effective program. And basically what I talk to the athletes is about the dangers of gambling, obviously, and the relationships that they keep. And it's been a very effective program. It's kind of my way of giving back, and I'm very satisfied or gratified with the ability to be able to do that. So that's how I started speaking. From there, the pastor of my church, when I was in the hole, I had hardly known the guy. He married me and my wife. My wife was a Christian. I was, still whatever I was at that point in time. But he was a really nice guy. And while I was in solitary, he would send me money for my commissary. He would send me books to read. And I would tell my wife, why is this guy sending me money? I don't know him. I don't feel right. She said, don't worry about it. He loves the Lord and Tony loves you. Just, buy some commissary. So when I got out, he said to me, Michael, you got a great testimony. Will you please give your testimony to the church? I said, testimony? I thought you did that from a witness stand. I didn't even know what he was talking about, right? Anyway, I started speaking. I did this for him. I couldn't turn him down. And from that point on, people, I don't know how it caught on. It just caught on. And I've spoken at probably close to 2,000 ministry events over the past 25 years. So transformation, yes. And I will tell you this, and I put it out there, yes, I am a Christian, and I will tell you this, and then I'll get off of that. If you have questions, be happy to answer that. But Jesus Christ is not only my Savior, but He's my hero in life. Not only for the Savior that He is, but for the man that He was. There was no greater man that ever walked the face of the earth than Jesus of Nazareth. And I can get into that for the next 2 hours if you wanted to hear why I feel that way. And He's been the reason for my transformation. Because if you can emulate the greatest man that ever walked the face of the earth, well, then you will transform from the inside out. And everybody that I know over the past 20 some odd years that has made the transformation will tell you the same thing. So I'm going to leave that at that. And, you know, and again, you want to ask me questions about it afterwards, people, you can ask me anything that you want. I've been asked everything under the sun. You're not going to offend me, I promise you that. If I don't want to answer, I know how to take the fifth. I've done that many times in my life, so don't worry about that. But, you know, I will tell you how this kind of came about, because I was, when I finally went into the hole, I'll tell you what happened. I had done 5 years, 13 months, violated my parole. What happened to me, I was walking out of a bank in Southern California, and there was 15 agents. Slapped the cuffs on me, went into the bank, leaned all my bank accounts, took the keys to my car, drove it away, went to my house with a search warrant, and cleaned us out. Went into my wife's purse, took every penny out of there, and said, "You don't work, this is your husband's money. We're indicting him on another racketeering case. We violated his parole." They told my wife, "You'll never see your husband on the street again." Now, my wife and I married my wife, she was 20 years old, 21 years old. And we were married 4 months before I went into prison the first time. And while I was in prison, to be honest with you, I got a one-day furlough, she got pregnant. I was in the halfway house, she got pregnant. So now we got 2 little babies. And I had just done 5 years. I'm out for 13 months. It was a very difficult 13 months for me. People were upset with me, trying to get my life squared away. The government was really pressuring me, trying to make me a witness. It was a lot of trouble. It was a bad time for me. Big shot mob guy, made all that money on the street. I was like a fish out of water in LA, trying to get my life squared away under some pretty tough conditions, right? So when they locked me up this time, you know, she was now 27 years old. We had these 2 babies. They told her, "You'll never see your husband free again." She had kind of a breakdown on me. She couldn't come and visit me for like 2 months. Very, very tough time. So when they threw me in solitary that night, on the way down to the lockup, they said, "Franzese, we're done with you. We don't want you to cooperate. We know you've been jerking us around, basically. We violated your parole. We're indicting you on another case. You'll never see the street again." And they threw me in the hole that night. And people, I want to tell you something. I was always a guy that I figured I can handle anything. I had a lot of success on the street. I can handle anything, no problem. Well, that night was the first night in my life that I said, it's really over. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this one. They locked me down. I knew they couldn't put me out on the yard. I got a lot of people upset with me. I said, my wife, I really walked away from that life because of her, because I wanted a life with her. I said, I'm going to lose the girl I did all of this for. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in a 6x8 cell. Now understand, my father had gotten a 50-year prison sentence. My father did 40 years on that 50, and I visited him for 25 years. I knew all about prison, right? I had been indicted 7 times. I had 3 federal racketeering cases. I went to trial 5 times. I had a big case. Rudy Giuliani indicted me on a big case. I was the first major mob guy he indicted under the RICO statute. So I was very familiar with the law. I was very familiar with the process. And I said, I'm really done. I said, I'm going to spend the rest of my life in this cell. And I'm going to tell you something, people. I'm going to be honest with you, and this is not easy to say. I used to demean people that were suicidal. I said, you're weak. How do you not face up to your troubles? I don't do that anymore. Now that night I wasn't suicidal, but I was so broken, I said, you know what, God? I believed in God. I didn't have a relationship with God, but I believed in him. I grew up a Catholic. And I said, you know what? Just take me. I wanted to lay my head on that cot and just not wake up again. It was too painful for me to think of my future, having visited my dad, marrying this girl. She's going to be off with somebody else. It was just a bad night. I was broken. I was done. And I don't know if you ever got to that point in your life. I hope you never do, because it's a tough feeling. It's tough to get over. But I'm laying there and I'm done. Prison guard walks by my cell. He opens a flap on the door. He says, "Franzese, you okay? You don't look good tonight." I said, "Man, get away from me. I don't want to see you guys tonight. Leave me alone." I chased him. He left. Comes back about a minute later, and he pushes something through the slot on the door. Falls on the floor. I look down. Was a Bible. Now, I didn't want to see a Bible. I wanted a bottle of Prozac or something, right? I wanted to forget what I was going through. But people, I'll tell you this. I'm looking down at that Bible, and I'm getting so angry. I was angry with God because, hey, I walked away from that life. I married a Christian girl. Look what you did to me. You know, I'm blaming God for my mess up. I'm looking down at that Bible. I'm not exaggerating. I was getting so angry, I jumped off that cot. I picked up that Bible, and I slammed it against the cinder block wall as hard as I could. And it took me another minute, and I said, "You know what? I got nothing but enemies tonight on both sides of the fence." I said, "I don't need another enemy. It's only me and God in this cell." And I picked up the book, and I looked up at that cement ceiling, and I said, "God, if you're really up there, you need to give me something to make me feel better. I can't deal with this. I'm really having trouble." And I'm holding the book. And I never read the Bible. I don't know if any of you are Catholic, but you grow up as a Catholic, you read the catechism. Priest reads the gospel from the pulpit on a Sunday, right? And I'm holding it open, and the book pulls open to the book of Proverbs. Now, I'll tell you what, I don't know if you've ever read that book. Brilliant book. Solomon was brilliant. You know, when God said to Solomon in the book of Kings, "Nobody before you will ever be as wise, and nobody after you will ever be as wise," with the exception of Jesus, who had a little advantage, he was God, nobody was as brilliant as Solomon. And I believe that after reading that book. And I'm starting to read it, and I'm forgetting a little bit what I'm going through there. And then I came to a verse that really just stopped me cold. It was Proverbs 16:7, and I got that right here. I got it there for a reason. It says, "When a man's ways are pleasing to the Lord, even his enemies are at peace with him." And without getting into a lot of detail, people, the enemies verse got me first because I had nothing but enemies that night. And then something happened where I just got convicted and said, you know, who are you kidding? You married a Christian girl, you walked away from that life, but you really did it for your own reasons. You didn't do it for God, you didn't do it for me, you did it for yourself, which was true. And it was almost as if I thought that God was saying to me, well, if you did it for me, I could take care of your enemies, because I'm God. That's how I interpreted that verse that night. And I don't know if any of you might read your Bible. You can read a Bible verse 10 different times. It could have 10 different interpretations because the Lord speaks to you through that verse according to your needs at that moment. I believe that. Caused me to read on, and I came to a verse that's really become the verse of my life, people. And that's Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. And the reason they're here, because I never want to forget that night. Every morning when I brush my teeth, wash my face, I got it right in front of me, a reminder. And Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight." And it was that night after I read that verse that I said, you know what, God? I said, I don't believe you right now. I said, I trusted my Father and I walked blindly into this life, and look where it got me. I said, take it a step further in my life. I took a blood oath. I surrendered my life to Cosa Nostra, Mafia, this thing of ours. When you come into that life, people, you got to give it up, body, mind, and soul, or you don't survive. I said, I did this twice in my life. I can't do this again. If you really are God, if this Bible, like my wife is telling me, written by men but inspired by you, the blueprint for our life, and you take it a step further, as a Christian, we're supposed to believe the only way to get to heaven is through Jesus Christ. No gray area, black and white, Jesus or nothing. I said, you know what, God, you're asking a lot of me. You put me on this earth. I didn't ask to come here. You gave me a free will. You said I can choose one of any faiths, or I don't have to choose any faith at all. And now you're telling me this is the only way to go? No, God, you got to prove it to me. You got to show me the evidence. And people, I want to tell you something. I know a little bit about evidence, okay? I've been in front of the Supreme Court on constitutional issues in my dad's case. I've been to more parole hearings than there are people in this room, more appeal processes than you can imagine. I know the law. Evidence has played a major, major role in my life. I think in terms of evidence. I tell people, you're not selling me the Brooklyn Bridge when I'm paying attention. I want to see the facts. You got to prove it to me. And I can only tell you this, people. I'm a Christian. But my Christianity was first based upon evidence. Because for the next 29 months and 7 days, if you see my prison Bible, there's more of my notes on there than Scripture. I read that Bible inside out and upside down. I can't tell you how many times. I had my wife send me in over 400 books on every faith because I wanted to know the truth. And I came out of there believing in my faith. And for the last 20 some odd years, God has only made that more evident in my life. To see what he's done in my life and what I've seen he's done in the lives of others, which really puts my testimony to pale. Some of the things that God is at work in people's lives. So I thought it was appropriate for me to explain that because that kind of tells you from where I came and where I am today. And that's the reason. When you talk about transformation, it was only my relationship with the Lord that allowed me to break this mindset that I had and really transform my whole way of thinking. And I will tell you, I had a lot of success on the street. I know Peter told you a little bit about it, and I don't need to get into all of that. When I got into that life, I was 24 years old when I took an oath and became a made member of the Colombo family, one of the 5 New York Mafia Cosa Nostra families. And when I got into that life, I had one goal. I wanted to be the best possible mob guy I could be. I wanted to make a lot of money. Unlike John, who said he never got into business to make money, I got into business always to make money. That was the deal for me. And I went on and had a lot of success. The biggest thing that I did at that time, I devised a scheme with a partner of mine to defraud the government out of tax on every gallon of gasoline. It was an operation that I ran for 8 years. I had the Russian mob guys as my partners. At the height of my operation, I had over 350 gas stations I either owned or operated. I was selling 500 million gallons of gas a month, taking down 20, 30, 40 cents a gallon, whatever the market would bear at that point. And at the height of our operation, we were taking in between $8 and $10 million a week. It was probably the biggest operation on the street since the days of Prohibition. I had my own jet plane. I had a helicopter. I had a house in Florida, a house in New York, a house in Marina del Rey, California. I had over 300 guys under me ready to do anything I tell them to do. In 1980, I became a captain in the family, which is a very high position. My boss came to me and said, Mike, you're doing a good job for the family. In turn, I'm going to make you a capo regime. And again, very powerful position. And I think at one point in time, my father's goal was to have me become boss of the family, and he was pushing for that because obviously if I was boss, my father, who had a lot of juice in that family, very respected guy, he was the underboss at one point in time, we would end up controlling the Colombo family. How did things change for me? You know, I said we have defining moments in our life. Well, I'll tell you this, I've had a couple. My dad at 24 years old, he proposed me for membership in that life. Prior to that, I was going to be a doctor. I was a pre-med student, Hofstra University. My dad gets a 50-year prison sentence. Life changes for me. He goes away. He ended up doing 40 years on that 50. When he goes into prison, he claimed to me, he said, Mike, I'm innocent. I never committed this crime. He was alleged to have masterminded a nationwide string of bank robberies. I sat with him. He said, Mike, I'm innocent of this crime. I believed him. My dad never lied to me. I love my dad very, very much. He was my hero in life up till that point. And I said, Dad, I'm not going to school. If I don't help you out, you're going to die in here. Joe Colombo was the boss of my family. He kind of took me under his wing, very close with him. And things changed in my head. I got to help my father. Long story short, he said, if you're going to be on the street, I want you to do it the right way. And he proposes me for membership in that life. When you're in that life, you can't just go up to somebody and say, hey, I'd like to join. How do I become a member? You know, somebody has to propose you, vouch for you, say you have what it takes. In my case, it was my dad. I was 21 years old when he proposed me. I went through kind of a pledge period where I had to prove myself worthy. And in 1975, on Halloween night, 1975, I became a made member of that life. I took a blood oath along with 5 other guys, and that's how it all started for me. And when I got into that life, like I said, I was very fortunate. I knew how to use that life to benefit me in business and went on to have a lot of success. And I love my dad. I did get him out of prison after 10 years. I got him out on parole. My dad, unfortunately, was in and out 5 times. He violated his parole 5 times, each time for associating with another felon or somebody alleged to be an organized crime. You can't do that when you're on federal parole, and he kept going back in. You know, it was very unfortunate. He ended up, like I said, doing 40 years in prison. My dad was released in 2017 at the age of 100. He was the oldest inmate in the system on his release, and my dad unfortunately passed away during a pandemic at the age of 103. He was the oldest living made man in America for sure, quite possibly in the world. That's not a lifestyle that's conducive to a long life. I think my dad outlived just about everybody in that life. And you can read about. Is this good? Working? So one of the dangers or one of the horrors of that life, people, is that you make a mistake, and I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes I don't like to say this in front of the ladies. It's a little bit offensive, but I want to be honest with you because you need to understand what real transformation is. One of the horrors of that life, you make a mistake, your best friend walks you into a room and you don't walk out again. And unfortunately, in my 20 years, you know, being in a high level of that life, I've seen it happen before. And I want you to understand something too. You know, when we take that oath, we are given certain rules and policies that we have to obey. And there's no question, you have to obey them. For instance, you never, ever violate another made man's wife, daughter, sister, mother. That could end up in your death. It's that serious. You know, you never betray the family, obviously, very serious. You know, if you're in business, you got to be honest. If you're caught being dishonest with another made member, very serious, be in a lot of trouble. We all understood that. We all took an oath. We all agreed to it. So our mentality is, well, we all know the oath that we took. If you make a mistake, the family, the life becomes before anything. So if I'm responsible for performing the consequence on your life, we all understand that. So we kind of justify it. Is it wrong? Of course it is. There's no justification for that. But that's the mindset that we have. And that's the mindset that has to be broken if you're going to get out of that life. So again, one of the horrors is you walked into a room, you don't walk out again. Well, one day my dad was on parole, and there was kind of talk on the street, you know, in that life, it's a double-edged sword. You'll experience this in your life now. When you're a young guy and you're doing well, some of the older people are looking at you, they get a little bit resentful. I have my own jet plane, a helicopter, I got a big crew, I'm making a lot of money. So some people start to get worried also. This guy's got a big crew, he's young, he's got a big name, you know, he's making headlines. Is he ever going to think of taking over the family? And there was talk on the street. My boss was a little bit nervous about that. He started asking questions, even though I was handing him at one point $2 million a week. It's a lot of money, right? You're bringing in. So there's talk on the street, and, you know, I'm aware of it. My dad calls me up. He was on parole. He was a captain in the family. He says to me, Mike, the boss wants to see us tonight. I said, okay, Dad, what time you want me to pick you up? Because he was on parole, I was trying not to get him violated. I didn't have a record at that point. I would keep him with me. I would take him everywhere so nobody would get close to him, right? He says, well, they want to do this a little bit differently tonight. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, they want me to come in first and they want you to come in second. I says, well, why do they want to do that? I said, no, Dad, we're going together. We're not going to let them separate us. You know, there's been some talk on the street. We go together. He said, no, we can't do that. We got an order. We have to do it the way the boss asked. I said, no, we're going together. It was the first time in my entire life that I ever had an argument with my dad, because I respected my dad. He was everything to me. And my dad gave me a lot of good advice, which I'm going to share with you, because I think it's helpful. But that night I wasn't going for it. We argued for about a half an hour in the driveway of his house in Long Island. Finally, I threw up my hands. I said, you know what, Dad? I've been listening to you all my life. I don't like this, but I'm going to do what you want. So I leave. I get a call from another captain in the family, Jimmy Angelina. He's passed away now. He says, Mike, meet me in such and such a place, and we're going to go see the boss. The boss was on parole also. So this had to be a covert meeting. We had to make sure nobody was following us, right? So I leave. I go. I meet him in Brooklyn. I get out of my car. I get in his car. Now, I know this guy my whole life, right? There's somebody sitting in the back seat that I recognize. He wasn't a made guy. Made guy means a guy that took the oath. I recognized him a little bit, but I didn't know who he was. And I'm saying, what is this guy doing here? Why is he here? This is kind of a high-level meeting. What is he here for? So he doesn't say anything. I shake his hand. We get in the car. We're driving a little bit, making sure nobody's following us. And I'm waiting for Jimmy to tell me what this is all about. He doesn't tell me. He starts talking to me about the Yankees. Now, I'm a diehard Yankee fan. I didn't want to hear about the Yankees that night. I wanted him to tell me what was going on. He doesn't say anything. We finally, after about 20 minutes, we get to the house in Brooklyn where the meeting was taking place. It was a summer day in August, I'll never forget. And we park the car, and I get out of the car, and he gets out, and then I hear the door slam for the guy in the back seat. And I'm saying, why would this guy be in this meeting? He shouldn't be in there. Now I'm getting a little bit nervous, I'll be honest with you. And people, I'll tell you this. It was about a 30-yard walk from the car door down to the basement apartment where we had to go. And I'm getting really nervous. I'm saying, I don't like this setup. As I'm walking down that path, my heart starts to beat out of my chest. My legs are getting a little bit weak. I can tell you this, when I tell this story, I can smell the flowers that night in August, and I can kind of see the fireflies floating around there because my senses were getting so high because I said to myself, this is bad. I said, I may lose my life here tonight. This is a bad setup. And somebody has said to me, well, Michael, why didn't you cut and run? You know, you could have ran. It wasn't heroic. It was kind of robotic. I was such a product of that life at that point. I said, well, if this is it, then this is it. And I walked down those steps, and people, I'll tell you this, when that door opened, I don't know how I didn't faint, because that could have been the end of it. And my partner, Tony, who I know for 40 years, he goes back, you know, that long a time with me. He understands. It's funny now, buddy. It wasn't funny that night, as you know. So anyway, I'm here, right? So it worked out. They started grilling me about the gas business and the money and all of this, and I started getting angry. Because I said, hey, I'm bringing all this money in. There was an article in the Long Island Press that had come out that said I was becoming powerful enough to break off from the Colombo family and start my own family. There was no truth to it whatsoever. It was a made-up story by some reporter trying to sell newspapers. And they were using that article, and I said, when they write about other people, it's a lie. When they're writing about me, it's the truth. I said, what do you believe in this stuff for? I said, I'm doing everything. I'm bringing all this money, and now I'm being looked at it this way. I'm starting to get mad. Well, let me tell you something, people. Good lesson. You never outshine the master. Never outshine, especially in that life. So I kind of calmed myself down, answering the questions. We get through it all. We're finished. Everybody's happy. Have a glass of wine. Let's hug, you know, the whole thing. I was so aggravated that night, I just wanted to get out of there. I said, Jimmy, drive me back to my car. I got a long drive home to Long Island. We get in the car, and I'm ready to just blast Jimmy, verbally blast him. And because I'm angry, because he never prepared me for anything. So just before I do that, he says, stop. Before you say anything, I have to tell you something. I said, well, it's about time you tell me something. I said, I know you my whole life. And he looks at me and he said, Mike, he said, you held yourself pretty well in there tonight. This was very serious. Could have been a problem. And I looked at him and I said, you know that? You knew that? I know you my entire life, and you're walking me into that room. You knew that. And he looked at me and he said, and I said to him, you didn't tell me anything? And he looked at me, he was very smart, and he said, if it were the other way around, would you have told me? And I looked at him and I said, no. He said, it's the life we lead, Mike. You know it as well as anybody. You grew up in it. I said, okay. And I was just thinking, I couldn't really say anything. I was thinking about it. We get to where my car is parked, and as I go to get out, he grabs my arm right here and he says, Michael, I'm going to tell you something. He said, you're not going to want to hear this, but it's the truth. He said, you could stake your life on it. I said, what? He said, your father was in there before you tonight. He didn't help you one bit. he hurt you. I was stunned. I couldn't even respond to him. I looked at him and I got out of the car and I walked away because now I'm questioning him for a minute. And then as I'm walking back to my car, I'm thinking, knowing my father so well, I know what he did. He didn't try to hurt me, but he said, hey, I don't know. My son does everything. I don't do anything. I'm on parole. If money is missing or he's got any ideas, I don't know anything about it. Instead of standing up for me, he kind of threw me under the bus. And that was harmful that night. And I walked back and I said to myself, if this life can separate father and son, what do I really have here? What am I really doing here? It wasn't until 2 years later that I met my wife. I never said a word to my father because in that life, people, you don't speak out of turn. You keep things to yourself. You don't talk out of turn. Silence is golden. But I can tell you this. My wife's a young Christian girl. I walked away from that life really to preserve her life. And when I say preserve her life, I don't mean so we'd have a life together is what I meant. Because I don't know any family of any member of that life that hasn't been totally destroyed, including my own. Now, not my wife and kids. I've been able to preserve that or protect them from that. But my father, 40 years in prison. My mother died in 2012, 33 years without a husband. At the end of her relationship with my dad, at the end of her life, I can only describe her relationship as being ugly because she blamed him for everything that went wrong in her life, and rightfully so. What went wrong? I had a sister, 27 years old, died of an overdose of drugs. My brother, 25 years a drug addict. I can't even begin to tell you what he put our family through, me personally, just trying to keep him alive on the street. My other sister, 40 years old, she was never mentally strong, I would say. She died at the age of 40. The whole family destroyed. I was the only one that survived. So I said, I'm going to marry this young girl, and she's going to go through the same thing with me being in this life. Eventually, I was such a major target, they're going to destroy our life. Why would I do this? So I walked away from the life really to have a life with her. But I said, if this life can separate people, if that didn't happen to me that night with my dad, I don't think I would have ever walked away from that life because I wouldn't have wanted to betray my dad's feelings about me. And what I believe happened that night, people, I really mean this, is that God the Father, the Heavenly Father, break that tie that I had with my earthly father in order for this transformation to start and be. Why I say this, because transformation doesn't happen overnight. I think there's certain defining moments and certain steps in our life as you build to that transformation that have to take place. We don't even realize what's happening. But then when you look back in your life and you see the pattern or the steps or the things that happen, you finally realize, okay, this was a plan and a purpose that God had for my life, and this is how it had to happen. I'll also tell you this. If I didn't spend 3 years in solitary, I wouldn't be standing up here today. Because had I been on the street, there's no way that I would have come around to the Lord and been transformed. I don't believe I would have. I had to do that bad time, and he had to get my full attention because I was a guy that thought I was always in control of myself. So I don't think it could have happened. So a lot of things that you think you're going through a bad time, that maybe God is doing his best work in your life. But and again, maybe I'm saying too much. Maybe I'm preaching at this point in time, but I can't help it. This is what I do. But I want to tell you something, people. Nothing is out of your reach. If you're really determined to do something, you can get it done. Now, I want to finish up with this. That's kind of part of it, but I want to tell you this. What's the best thing you've learned here today? I don't know. Maybe it was from John. Maybe it was from my friend Brett. You want to learn a little business, a little something. I can tell you something. I was always determined to be the best possible me that I can possibly be. That's helped me in business. It's helped me in my life personally. I've been a great networker throughout my life because I value people. And there's times when I meet somebody, there's nothing that can happen between us today, but maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, you have the old thing we used to call a Rolodex. You got somebody, hey, I remember I met this person, whatever, and maybe they can benefit you and you can benefit them at some point in time later on. Networking, extremely important in your life. You know, having people trust you, have confidence in you, having people like you, very important. And I'm going to give you a story that's going to kind of emphasize that a little bit. My partner, Sam, he's standing right. Put your hand up, Sam, so people know you. Sam's my partner in the wine business. I want to tell you how he's my partner. He, about 6 years ago, 5, 6 years ago, he was 19 years old. He sent me an email. He said, Mr. Franzese, I would love to come down and have lunch with you. He lives up in Sacramento. I'm in Southern California. I said, okay, come on down. I got a half an hour we can spend together. Comes down, we have lunch, we're talking, we spend 3 hours together. During that time, he says to me, you know, I've been following you since I'm 10 years old. I looked at him, 10 years old. What 10-year-old follows a guy like me? You want a sports figure, you want a pop star, whatever, you know? Guy like me. It was very impressive because as I saw something in him. He was very observant. He asked a lot of questions. It was really, it was admirable. Let me put it that way. We stayed in touch, did a couple of things, you know, back and forth. And then about 2.5, 3 years ago, he approaches me. He says, Mr. Michael, very respectfully, he said, I want to go in the wine business with you. It's wine business. I never even thought of that. I says, well, what do you mean? His uncle has a vineyard in Armenia. And he said, we want to introduce our wine into the United States, and we want to brand it in your name. Well, why would you want to brand it in my name? Very simple. These are the first vineyards, Noah's Ark. Everybody familiar with Noah's Ark? When Noah's Ark landed and the flood subsided, it landed at the foot of Mount Ararat. And there the new civilization came about, and the first vineyards in the new civilization were planted there, and the first wineries came out of that. So it's transformation. He said, your life is all about transformation, and we think this can really work. So I said, well, let me taste the wine. Tasted the wine, it was nice. Price, great. I said, let me think about it. And we go into business together, but I want to tell you this. You know why I'm in business with him? Not because I wanted to be in the wine business, because he was the product. He represented himself so well, and I was so attracted to the young man that he was. I said, I'm going to take a shot with you. And in the last 2.5 years, he's proved me to be right 100 times over. Because he works, he's very ethical, he's honest, he does everything the right way. Has he made some mistakes? Yeah, we all do. No big deal. That's business. We're going to make them. We got to learn how to overcome them. It's been a great synergy between us. And I'll tell you how good that's worked. In the wine business, in order to really get going in this business, you got to have a major distributor, like RNDC or Southern Glazers, and that's how you get your product distributed all over the country, so they say. We did a little investigation. They may have come on with us, but we found out that maybe that's not the way to go. Because you get a big distributor that's got 1,000 different brands and you're only one of that 1,000, they're not pushing you. Because they may take you on, but that doesn't mean they're going to go out and push your product. We learned this thing. So now, we want to get some big retail outlets. Well, you can't get them unless you got a big distributor behind you. Well, we're going to try to do it in reverse. This young man, we send a video to Kroger Foods, 3,600 stores around the country, Costco, Total Wines, now Walmart, you name them, right? Can't get into any of these without a major distributor. Well, we send them the video, I give them my thing, they all agree to meet with us. We go and sign up every one of these retail outlets without having a major distributor, and then we brought the distributor on later on. We did it the other way around, okay? Because we had a good relationship together, we sit down, the product is good. So what am I saying with all of this, people? You got to be the best possible person that you can be, whether it be in business or in life. That's really what it's all about. So if there's a transformation now that you don't need and you're not at your best, now's the time to become the best possible person you can be. And what John said is right. You don't all have to be leaders. I can tell you that right now. It's not in everybody's DNA to be a leader. Some people are just better workers than they are leaders, and I've told them that. I said, listen, you can't run the business? Okay, but you can operate within the context of that business and do what you do best. Because my slogan in life is this: when it comes to business, do what you do best, delegate the rest. Because people have called me a brilliant businessman. I'm not a brilliant businessman, I'll tell you that right now. There's a lot of things in business I'm not good at, I don't want to do, I don't like to do, and if I don't like to do something, I'm just not going to do it to the best of my ability. I'd rather give it to somebody else. But I had two talents. One talent, I really knew what a good business was about. I had foresight in the business that I was going to get involved in. So I knew how to pick something out, and then I knew how to put the right people to do the right job within that business and motivate to be the best possible person at that spot that they can be. You can't micromanage, you can't do everything, because nobody does everything that well. You know, even my partner here, he's a workaholic. Sometimes he wants to do everything. I said, Sam, you can't. Just not enough time in a day. It's too big an undertaking. Get the right people, pay them right, motivate them, treat them good, and let them do the work for you. Just manage them properly. That's important. So things like that. And you know, look, I can stay here and give you the benefit of the experience I've had in my life, some good, some bad. And people, let me tell you something, I've made a ton of mistakes throughout my life. There's no perfect person out there. I can't say I did everything right. I've made a tremendous amount of money, and I've lost a tremendous amount of money. I've done it both ways. And here's this, you know, be the best possible person that you can be. I visit young people, but I did a lot of prison work with, and I've told them straight up, there's two things that you got to do in your life. If you want to get on the right track, there's two things. Remember this, I'm going to give you two pieces of advice. Number one, in this life, you are who you hang out with. You hang with the wrong crowd, you're going to be known to be the wrong type of person. You're in business, you hang with people that are not good in business, you're not going to be good in business. Very simple. You got to hang with the right crowd if you want to be the right person in life, number one. Number two, who you are accountable to in life is going to dictate the path that you follow in your life. When I was on the street, I was accountable to my boss, I was accountable to my oath, I was a criminal. When I cleaned that up, I became accountable first to my God, second to my wife, my children, people that rely on me. I have partners, they expect me to do the right thing, and that keeps me on the right track. You have to. That's it. And remember this, people, when I transformed, I didn't get a lobotomy. I don't forget the things I did on the street. You know, there's a slogan, you could take the boy out of Brooklyn, you can't always take Brooklyn out of the boy. There's times when I have urges to do the wrong thing. Honestly, every time I go to a gas station, it drives me crazy. Because, you know, as I'm paying these prices, you know how much tax on every gallon. I still keep up with this. Tax on every gallon of gasoline now, the state tax in California is 18 cents a gallon. You know, back in my day, it was, the federal tax rather, is 18 cents a gallon. Back in my day, it was 9 cents. You know, in California, the state and federal and everything adds up to about 70 cents a gallon. Do you know how wealthy I would be right now just putting the plan that I had in motion before? Forget it, you know? So every time I got to put gas in my car, it's horrible, you know, it is. But I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I've had guys come to me, Tony knows, hey, don't worry about it. You don't have to do anything. Just tell me what to do. I'll do it all. Yeah, until you get in trouble and then you point the finger back at me because that's how it goes. I said, no, I'm not doing it. So I resist all that stuff like that. Why? Because I'm accountable to the right people and I hang with the right crowd. I hang with people that are going to make me better, not make me worse. So really that's it, people. I mean, you know, I don't know how much time we have. We're going to leave some time for questions. So I'm going to wrap it up. But anyway, thank you all very much. Questions?